There we go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Operation Miss podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jessica Thompson. We have our second co-host here. Say what's up, Catherine.
Hello, everybody.
And we have a special guest today, and her name is Ashlee. And I'm going to let Catherine introduce her to our listeners.
Yes, so, oh my goodness, it's been almost a year actually since we met. And it was such a blessing because we were at a walk in Georgia that is to help women understand that they're not alone when they're going through things like depression, anxiety, other mood disorders associated with pregnancy. But what I noticed was that even though the day was like, it was not sunny when we first got started, but you brought the sunshine, Ashlee. So that's what I will say about her. Because her story is so amazing that if I give any of it right up front, it will possibly diminish it. But what I will say is that everywhere Ashlee goes, she brings joy along with her. And that is what I noticed about her. That was why I hope we stayed connected afterwards. And when you did reach out it was months later.
Right. Yeah. It was like August, September. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was an answered prayer. So we are so honored to have you here on the call. So please tell some people about you, a little bit about you as a person, as a mom, as a professional.
Sure. Yeah. So I am originally from Virginia, and I'm from Roanoke, Virginia, but then I went to college in Richmond, Virginia, which is like 3 hours from Roanoke. So lived there for like 13 years as an adult, and I had started work in counseling. I was doing like in-home counseling and then crisis counseling. And then I realized I didn't feel like I could have as significant as an effect with just coming in short term. I wanted to do the more long-term work and really get to the root of the behaviors that we were seeing. And usually you do that in outpatient therapy. So I took a certification in something called EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that's one of the main treatments for trauma. And after getting a few clients and using EMDR with them, I realized I needed to specialize even within that and focus on people who have more dissociative traits. Because a lot of my clients had significant childhood abuse. And when you have that much abuse, basically, the way I've heard it explained, your brain can't connect with your abuser at the same time you're trying to flee. So if your parent is your main source of nurture and abuse, your brain sort of splits in a way. And so for you to just exist. And so you go through life with sort of this dissociated part of yourself. You don't feel fully connected, fully whole. And so that's what was happening with a lot of my clients. And so that's my specialty now. And so I have a outpatient counseling business that has spread to a few states. We're in Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, and Massachusetts.
Go, girl. That's for Ashlee.
Yes, right?
Yes.
And then we do all those virtual, and then we have offices, excuse me, in Mechanicsville and Georgia. So yeah, we're on the map now, and now we have 8 therapists, all specializing in different things, grief, marriage, trauma, substance abuse, you name it. We probably have somebody that can help you with it. So,
wow.
Do you have anybody that specializes in like sexual trauma?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are they in Georgia?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about that after.
Okay, sure.
Well, no. So this is good, right? So Jessica, it's so good that you brought that up, because when you think about the connection between the mind and the body, and even how you said, Ashlee, about dissociating from your own self.
Right. Yeah.
How do you, as a counselor, how do you see sexual trauma play out in childbirth and delivery? Or do you see where it could if you haven't had that personal experience?
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's heartbreaking to think about, because a lot of women don't recognize that their abuse history is going to come up in the OBGYN office.
Mm,
And so they don't realize until, their legs are up in stirrups and they're like, "What are you about to do?" You know? And
Yeah.
so I've heard of, especially teenage girls freaking out, fleeing the room.
mhm,
I did hear of one office in Richmond where the OBGYN was very intentional about, like, she dimmed the lights, she had candles, aromatherapy. Like, she was like, "We're going to make this as spa-like as
Amen.
possible."
yes.
And when I tell you that woman had a wait list, like, her wait list was years long,
Mm,
Wow.
because women wanted to feel safe while they're getting a pap smear or, having their prenatal visits because they just it brings up too much. Um, so prenatally and then, of course, labor.
mhm,
Oh, Lord,
Yeah.
just all the interventions that have to happen, forceps, tearing, those sorts of things just are so re-traumatizing for a lot of people. Even breastfeeding.
yeah,
A lot of people don't really feel connected to their breasts because their breasts were not their own.
mm,
So it's hard for them to breastfeed their baby because they just feel this disconnect.
Yeah. And I just really, I like that you brought that up because there are sometimes when, sometimes Jessica and I, we talk about, as healthcare providers, we know that there are some things that people just do out of habit. So you
Right.
pull back the sheet, you tell them to open their legs, I got to do the
Mhm.
cervical check. It's like, no, we don't have to do all of that, and we don't have to do it without consent. There's a way to do
Right.
it. There's a way to get ongoing consent. Jessica just
Right.
did a talk the other day, and I love how she said that during her pelvic health visits. It is ongoing consent. It's not you said yes to pelvic floor health, so now to pelvic floor therapy. So now it's yes, yes, yes to every intervention that I
Mhm.
bring up. It's a shared decision. And I just feel that sometimes people don't come to pelvic therapy because they don't understand that it doesn't have to be an internal assessment. It doesn't have to be that anybody sees anything on you that you don't want to be seen or
Right.
that they even have to touch you. There are a lot of things that we can do where we're not putting our hands on people.
Mhm.
And with the marriage, I think that needs to take place between PT and mental health counselors,
Mhm.
it would be a beautiful thing where you're walking with them while we're walking with them. And so
Right.
they're healing mentally, emotionally, spiritually as they're healing physically. So
Right.
thank
Exactly.
you for going into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, for sure. Because a lot of those pelvic floor conditions, or even the ones that happen postpartum, because of like
Mhm.
trauma with birth, are really associated with just different mental health conditions. Like a lot of
Mhm.
our folks will also be taking like antidepressant meds and all these things are usually happening together because when you have a pelvic floor dysfunction that's like presenting with symptoms that are decreasing your quality of life that can affect like
Mhm.
how you feel and your behaviors and things like that. So we love this mental health space and people who work in it. I definitely feel like we are too, but y'all definitely are underutilized tool for
Ooh.
people with just like especially like chronic pain like diagnosis.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So tell us, because you have experiences of your own. So talk with us a little bit about your pregnancy journey. Let's start there. And
Mhm.
of course, as you go along, some of the things that you knew to do intuitively as a counselor that maybe other people may not have known to do.
Sure, yeah. So, we got pregnant August of 2021. And ironically, it was about 10 days after we had just put in an application to adopt our daughter.
Wow.
So those 2 journeys were paralleling each other the entire time.
Mm.
And even that was somewhat of a mental health decision because I was so focused on, like, my ovulation and when was the right day to have sex, and, there had been about 4 months of that, and my husband was like, "You need to calm down." So we knew we wanted to adopt as well, so he was like, "Let's start this adoption process so we can have a baby, or like, we can have a child in the home, like, and you can calm down." And then and then, and pressure will be off. Little did we know we were probably, like, already pregnant when we put in the application, but
Wow.
neither here nor there. Um, so yeah, so that was something that I knew to do, and just knowing to get a doula.
Mhm.
So, we got a doula pretty early on, and, I'm trying not to bounce around too much, but I do wanna just touch on one of the things that I really felt was helpful with the doula. Like, in our journey, we found out that our son was possibly low birth weight. And that was really tough because, like, the doctors don't really tell you what to do. They're just like,
This
"Well."
is it.
Yeah, yeah, like, "Just keep eating healthy,"
Mhm.
and you're just like, "But this isn't what I want for my child," you know?
Yeah.
Um, I of course, had envisioned this healthy baby boy,
Mhm.
and so the doula was like, "Okay, you can drink beet juice." And then I think my chiropractor had said, like, "Yeah, we mixed up beet juice with carrots, and, like, there's this whole mix that he had made for his wife to increase, the birth weight." And then so when my son was born, he was 6 pounds, 6 ounces,
Wow.
and that was at 37 weeks, so, we coulda had a 7-pounder on our hands had we been at 40 weeks. So yeah, so, like, little things like that, so you don't feel so powerless just the entire time.
Yeah.
And so we already felt emotional throughout the majority of the pregnancy because we found out, at 20 weeks that he had an omphalocele. So that meant for him that 3 of his organs were outside of his abdominal cavity. I believe it was his stomach, his liver, and his bladder, I believe, were, like, in this little sack. And so, just going through all the things like, did I do something wrong? But a lot of the research for omphalocele says, if the mom is overweight, like, it might have a higher risk. I'm, like, literally, like, 1 to 2 pounds, 1 to 2 percentages over for overweight on the
You're not
BMI.
overweight. I've seen you. You're not overweight, Ashley.
But, try to just, like, conceptualize, okay, so I'm not really overweight, you know?
Yeah.
They said, I think older moms might have a higher risk, and, I was 34, so I wasn't geriatric maternal age yet, you know? And then I think they said if you're on, like, an antidepressant, you might have a higher risk.
Mhm.
It wasn't. So, and then I joined a Facebook group for moms of, children with ophaloceles, and most of the women on there didn't seem to match that criteria either. So I was like, "Okay, so they're just throwing stuff out there now at this point." So, um, so that was sort of a hard space to be in, to have a child with a birth defect and not know why it happened, and then feel powerless.
Mhm.
So, me and my husband just did a lot of praying. Like, we really thought the miracle was going to be that the Lord was going to heal his omphalocele in the womb.
Mhm.
We were just really praying for that. And so that consisted of me and my husband repenting for everything we could ever think of from childhood. Like, I would read something in the scripture and I'd be like, honey, what about this? We need to repent of, And so by the time Judah was here, I'm pretty sure we were cleansed, like, of everything.
That is, it's so crazy how we, assume that like God is like punishing us for
Right.
something that we have done, and it has nothing to do with those things. But it's just us trying to make sense of things,
Right.
because you just don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my husband, I will say, sometimes he gets frustrated easily with people. And so he had severed some friendships. So he called those people back and apologized. Like, we were reconciled with everybody. Right. Clean bill of health spiritually.
Ooh, that's funny.
So forgiving everybody, made up with everybody. So, but yeah, so I know that was not all mental health, but like spiritually, that was sort of how we tried to handle this, let's say.
No, this is beautiful. So then you get to delivery, and what happened?
Yeah, so we were planning to deliver on we were I think the 12th. I think the 12th was our initial C-section date. And we did have to have a C-section scheduled because with his liver being out, they already do a C-section because you just can't risk that being like squished coming down the birth canal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was scheduled for the 12th, and then they saw, I can't remember what it was. I think they just felt like, you made it to 37 weeks, and they didn't feel like there was going to be a benefit at that point to go to the 12th. And this was at one of our last prenatal visits. So we decided to move it up to the 4th because, I think the issue was we just wanted to make sure everything was going to be okay, and it was feeling like once he's out, we can do more medical intervention than when he's inside. They were fearful that, the sac might, just be at more risk. So we scheduled for the 4th, and, our parents came down, Michael's parents from Michigan, my parents from Virginia. And so the C-section was pretty smooth. It was a little weird that, you're like laid out like you're being crucified, you know? I was like, nobody tells you.
How about these spiritual connections, honey?
Right.
Yes, it crucified. Wait a minute. So you're laying on a table.
Arms strapped down.
Oh, they strap your arms?
Yes, child.
Did you know that, Catherine?
I did not know that.
Nobody tells
And I
you.
love hearing Ashlee explain this because this is that personality that I just love. I'm like, Lord, you gonna get the details about what's going on, if nothing else. Yeah, no, I did not know that.
Wow.
I'm like, why? Why do I have why?
Right. Like, I mean, I guess there was somebody along the way that tried to reach down, but I would not have. Like,
Yeah.
you can trust me, my hands will stay like right by my side, up here, behind my back. Like, they're not trying to reach down. I get what you're doing. I can wait.
But I do know this OB, and I forget where she is, but she might be the only person or one of the only OBs that does like assisted C-section. So she will allow the mom, like once the baby's like head is coming out, she will allow the mom to pull the baby out so she can be a part of her birthing experience. It's a beautiful thing.
Okay.
But I guess they didn't want that.
No. No.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had 2 doctors there because, with the omphalocele, I guess my doctor just felt like he wanted some backup. So, they were just like, looking around at my fibroids and commenting on those, like, "Oh, okay, okay," you know, and, um,
Oh,
if I could be honest and transparent with y'all, the man who was my anesthesiologist, he had on this, red hat that said, what was it? "Anesthesiologists make America great again?" I think something like that, and I was like, "Oh
wow.
god."
What's about to happen?
Right, am I about to die? Will I wake up? So so he is, he's the one who strapped my arms down, and
Oh my
he's,
God.
like, sitting right here beside me because he was like, "Oh, by the way, you might throw up." And I was like,
Mm.
"What?" I've never I've been under anesthesiology before because I had a DNC for my miscarriage.
Mhm.
So, I was completely out. I've never been, I guess, I don't think it was, I don't know
Like
what
when
they
they say
used,
Twilight.
but I was very present the whole time because it
Mhm.
only took about 15 minutes,
Mhm.
and so, he was like, "Oh, yeah, you might throw up," and so I threw up right away,
Wow.
which really shocked me because 'cause I'm not typically a queasy person,
Okay.
but it's sorta like, "Okay, I feel like I have to trust you because 'cause you're, like, holding my little tin to where I could throw up, but I don't really trust you," you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So that was probably the only, like, uneasy part of the C-section, but then they're, like, lifting my baby out, they show him, and, my husband was there taking pictures. In retrospect, if we had to do it again, I would have had my husband record his voice
Mm.
because I don't have a recording of Judah crying.
Mhm.
That is It's like, dang it, you have the pictures, but you don't have a recording. I've heard doctors don't like recordings,
Right.
but I'm wondering if we coulda just done the audio, even if it wasn't a video, just the
Yeah.
audio of Judah crying, and then we're good.
But
Yeah.
Ashley, here's the thing, and I'm not saying that you should just go against all rules that are in place. But at the end of the day, the rules that are in place are not to protect you. They're not really thinking about that particular rules, it's not to protect you. Um, and it's a memory that you can't have because of some red tape that's in place for no reason.
Right.
Right? It's a rule that's not needed. And sometimes women truly, like me, choose not to birth in a hospital because I want those videos. I want every time my husband
Right.
goes back and he looks and he hears himself say, "She's even more beautiful than when she was in your belly." She will get to see that one day,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's like there are memories that the healthcare system just
Mhm.
don't realize are vital and valuable.
Right,
And
yeah.
so breaking the rules is like, what's the rule really in place for? Let's think
Right.
about that part
Mhm.
because now you're a mom that doesn't have that experience
Right,
for no
exactly.
reason. So
Mhm.
I'm not all about just breaking rules for the sake of breaking rules, but I am about let's think about why this rule is in place. Why do my arms have to be
Right.
strapped down? Why? And so that's what we like Miss Moms to just ask. So
Right.
to have this IV? Why do I have to lay on the bed? Why do you have to keep the monitor on me all the time? Why do you
Mhm.
have to do this check every 5 minutes? And if the answer is not something that's life or death, then
Right.
let's just not do it sometimes.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
it's triggering, do we have to? If it's uncomfortable, do I have to? If it's breaking up my rhythm, I'm in in the zone where I'm breathing, I'm trying to focus. Do we have to do this? And we should not be afraid to ask why, and
Right.
then if the right answer is not given, to make a different decision. And so I
Mhm.
love that you said that because for all women who are listening, if anything is going on with your child and you're not sure about the length of their life, you're not sure about the
Absolutely.
should
Yeah.
be okay with your husband pressing the audio button for a minute just so you can hear. Yeah.
Yeah, yep, because that wasn't something I thought about because after he came out, he was hooked up to ventilators the rest of his life.
Mm.
So he didn't really cry anymore, you know? So, yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's like it helps people to know what to slow down and do. Because like your
Mhm.
diary entries, I would love for you to talk about that and, what made you do that and how women can commemorate those times. Because we have actually done another episode with a young lady who, experienced a loss, but
Mhm.
it was during the delivery. And so during those days
Mhm.
following, I know she didn't do any of what you did. And I imagine that if you know that you have a diagnosis where it could be, because I know for your sweet baby, it wasn't that the omphalocele is what
Right. Yeah.
the cause of him passing.
Mhm.
For her, she was told that it would either be right at birth or within the first couple of days. And so for
Mm.
women who know that already, it's like, what can we do going into it to commemorate as much
Mm.
as we can?
Yeah.
And audio, the journals, things like that is really helpful, can be really helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I had, thought about it because, like you said, we didn't know that Judah was gonna pass. We had met with the surgeon, they can just, like, slowly lower the organs back into the abdominal cavity and then put a bunch of gauze around him, and you sort of go on with life. Like, I'm oversimplifying it tremendously, but, it wasn't a death sentence.
Mhm.
And so those what really sort of changed our mindset was he was in Macon, he was born in Macon, and then the next day, they got very concerned about his breathing capacity, and so he was transferred to, Atlanta, to CHOA, the Children's Hospital of Atlanta. And so, when we got there, well, they sent him there because they thought he was a candidate for the echo machine, which is this machine that, like, breathes for you, essentially. And so when we got there, they told us, "No, he's not a candidate because it could cause a brain bleed." And so they said, "Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do for your baby." And
Mm.
so we were just like, my thinking was, he was just born yesterday. Like, he's like, how are you saying he's not going to live past today? Because on the Facebook groups for the omphalocele parents, people's babies were fine,
Mhm.
like, and unfortunately, you see a lot on social media blogs. Only listen to positive birth stories. Somebody has a negative birth story, don't listen to it, don't read about it. So, if there was a baby with an omphalocele that had passed, I would glance at it, but I would keep scrolling. And then there was a page that I found out later called the O Angels,
Mm.
'cause, they're called O babies with an omphalocele, and so, later I found out that there was a O Angels page for babies that had passed with it. But while I was pregnant, I certainly wouldn't have looked at that, and so, I was just thinking, like, even those babies that passed, they were here for, like, 6 months, so I was like, "How could he die in 1 day?" Like, he just got here. So, you know, and then I heard my dad in the corner saying, "Well, at least Pops," who's my grandfather, "will be there to greet him at the gate." And I was just like,
No.
"No, no, 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 he just got here yesterday, just got
Yeah,
here."
yeah.
And so, I was having all this sort of internal confusion, and I think my husband was getting mad.
Yeah.
So so we went out of the little conference room, and he went to where Judah was and started asking the nurses, "What numbers does he need to get to?"
Yeah.
And so, we called my husband's spiritual father, and he prayed over Judah, and Judah's number started going up.
Mm.
So,
Wow.
so that was on a Thursday, and that doctor wasn't gonna be there till Monday, so she didn't expect to see us on
Yeah.
Monday, and we were there.
Yes.
Yes.
He's still here. You know?
Mhm.
So, we really felt like, okay, here's the power of prayer that has brought our son literally from like the deathbed to still being alive. So we need to tell everybody we know to pray. So my husband starts doing these Facebook lives telling people what's going on, giving his numbers, giving his reports. And my husband he could be very talkative. And so,
Your husband already. I don't even know him.
Yeah, he's awesome.
so that was his way of processing. And he was like, babe, you should come on the Facebook lives with me. And I'm like, no, like, that's just not my way of expressing myself. And so I had heard about Caring Bridge, where you can write updates about how a loved one is doing, and then people can read your journal entries and they could donate to your Caring Bridge page to keep it going. And so I started doing that and had posted that on my Facebook so people could sort of see my reflections while my husband was doing his Facebook Live updates.
Yes.
So
Now, can you talk about what your experience, because what got me when I read your entries was sometimes, so what kind of frustrates me is that I truly believe that there was a study that was done. It talked about NICU families and how
mhm.
the mom, the dad, the baby are just kept in the same place. That it's just easy.
Yep, absolutely
But not all hospitals can accommodate that, and that's
right.
understandable, I guess. But for some moms, they are literally separated from their baby, and then they're told, well, you'll be able to pump when you see them, or you'll be able to feed them when you see them. It's just
Yep,
it goes from being your baby
yep,
to being someone else's baby, or it
100%.
can feel like that. So can you just talk about how did it feel in those couple days with him on the ventilator and just kind of being separated and things like that?
Yeah, yeah. So that was honestly one of the toughest parts because I've wanted to be a mom for so long. I had in my mindset of still being flexible, but I didn't know I was gonna need to be that flexible. Like, you know,
Right.
I thought the battle was gonna be like, is breastfeeding gonna work or not? Like, is it
Mhm.
gonna latch or not? Like, is it gonna be too painful? Like, that was my you know, conflict in my head. I had not anticipated, like, you might be taught how to breastfeed, and then it'll go in this little tube, and they'll dip a cotton swab and put some of it in his mouth so he gets the taste of your breast milk, but that's not going to be the source of his nourishment. He's getting liquids through a IV,
Mm.
and me, since I had read about infancy, I knew, like, he needs to learn how to suck because that has developmental implications. He needs to learn to be close to me and, because that has attachment implications. So I'm thinking about all these things and, like, this is not this is not how a baby is supposed to come into the world to develop normally, you
Yeah.
know? And I know they're doing the best they can, but it becomes very scientific
Mm.
very quickly. And so I tried to do what I could. I would read to him, um, but, we aren't allowed to, like, change their diapers. They don't really wear clothes because, they have so many tubes, and the bed that they're on is, heat regulated, so they don't need clothes. They aren't cold, they aren't hot, they're perfect. Um, so it's just all the things you plan on doing, like somebody else gave him his first bath, you know?
Mhm.
All those things are somebody else. So it's a nurse. So it's very like disconnected. And it was tough for us with Judah, but then walking in the NICU, often we were like the only parents there. And so it was hard to see that for other babies too, that like, and not shaming any other parents. Thankfully, my husband had been in school. He actually left school because, I mean, I was having like 5 appointments a week with all the things. So he was supporting that. Um, and then I, own my own business, so I was setting my own schedule, and then I was on maternity leave. So thankfully we could be there, but most parents can't. You can't leave work for extended periods of time
Mm-mm.
to spend all day with your baby, even if that's what your heart desires. And then once you're there, you just feel like you're sitting watching them. So,
Helpless.
yeah, 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 that's a good word to describe the whole journey. You just feel very helpless.
Mhm.
Yeah. But so you came through it beautifully. I mean, I don't
Mhm,
know how else to describe your joy.
mhm.
I know that leading up to the walk, I think that we may have had a mom who either experienced loss or she was going to. And so I got out of the habit of, after knowing someone had a baby, of saying, "Oh, how's the baby? Where's the baby?" But I asked you something, I forgot what it was. I said, I asked something, and essentially you said, "Oh, my baby's not here." Because
Mhm.
you talked to me about your scar. I think that, I don't,
Right,
it was
right.
something like that. And so instead of me assuming that you had a baby, I asked you
Mhm,
the question in a different way. I don't remember what it was, but then you said, he passed away.
mhm,
And but you would never know it, I guess is what I say.
mhm.
It's almost like I said, like he lives through you. And so
Yeah,
it seems like he's still here, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So what helped you? What would you say? Because I imagine that, I know that when we talked, you talked about traveling. That was how the whole scar thing came.
Right.
I was like, "You're sitting in a car for how long? You still have
Yes.
to heal, girl. We can't sit. We have to, because even though the sweet baby is not here, you still have to heal as if, you know,
Mhm.
because you did undergo a major surgery. Now we know with your arm strapped down. So,
Right,
um,
right.
so there were just things that needed to be done. But how was it going home? How have you been coping? How is it that a month later you were able to show up to the walk and
Mhm.
do what you did and be show up for other people? What did that process look like?
Yeah, so, spiritually, I do lean a lot on that because that was really what helped us.
Mhm.
Like, Judah ended up passing from on a Friday, and I will say he passed from, pulmonary hypertension, which his lungs were just too small to support his blood pressure throughout his body, because of he also had scoliosis. And so
Mhm.
I think the scoliosis plus the omphalocele, his lungs just didn't develop to be as big as they needed to be, and it was different than like a preemie whose lungs are just too young. It
Mhm.
was like his lungs were literally too small for his body, you know? So yeah, so that's what he unfortunately passed from, and that was on a Friday, and, we were just like, "Okay, what do you do after your child passes?" So we were just, like, in a daze. He passed at, like, 5:42 in the morning. Um, we got to the hospital around 7 that morning because, mind you, we were driving from Macon to Atlanta, some of these days. So, we were just gonna come back home, and we stopped and ate at Carrabba's because we were just like, "We don't know what you do." So, it was in Carrabba's that somebody called us, one of my husband's friends. His cousin was the pastor of a church, and their whole church had been praying for us, and,
Mhm.
one of their, like, intercessors had called the pastor around 6 a.m. and was like, "The Lord told me that the child is dead."
Mhm.
And, that's actually, like, the exact phrasing of in scripture when David's child that he has with Bathsheba dies. The scripture is, the child is dead, and the child died on, I believe, the seventh day, which of course is significant in Jewish custom because they named them on the eighth day. So I don't believe the child had a name. But the next child that was born, his name is Jedediah, who became Solomon. They changed his name to Solomon. So we are sitting in Carrabba's talking to, this pastor, and he said, "The Lord has told me that your next child is named Jedediah." And little did he know, Michael had just said like 2 weeks ago, like, "Hey, if we have another boy, like, let's name him Jedediah. I really like that name." And so we just felt like so seen in that moment that like God had used these people we didn't even know, who were praying for Judah, who didn't even know him, to just remind us, like, I see what you're going through. There's been other people in the Bible that have gone through this. So just as I was with them, I'm going to be with you. And so we were just sitting in Carrabba's crying, and for whatever reason, their internet was down. So their cooks didn't know like how to fix some of the meals, so only certain meals were there. So we're crying. The waitress is like, "I'm so sorry. We have a limited menu because our cooks don't have instructions." So she's like, "I don't know why y'all are crying, but we're sad too."
Wow.
That these little nuggets, I'll call them like just God winks, helped us. So that was that Friday, and then my husband talked to another pastor friend of his on Saturday who was preaching in Florida that weekend, and he was like, "You want to come with us?" We're like, "We don't know what you do after your child passes, so we'll go to Florida." So we went to Florida for the weekend, and the lady, there was a pastor down there, she prayed that the spirit of grief would not settle on us. And she said she had a foster child that she had raised from very young, and then when they were a toddler, they got taken from her and placed back into a really rough situation. And she said she grieved for like 1.5 years over that. And she was like, "I will not let that happen to you all, where you are grieving for years over this loss." And so, she prayed that spirit of grief off of us. And it really did feel like, okay, like Judah's going to be in a better place. And, I can't confirm this, but she told us she had this dream where children whose parents were believers on earth, like in heaven, they had this like special place where they were like swimming with sea creatures.
Oh.
And so I haven't been to heaven. I don't know if that's where Judah is, but it's a wonderful thought. I think of all the time of him like swimming with the dolphins, perfectly healed, perfectly loved, doesn't have to go through like bullying or school shootings or a painful surgery. Like he's just like swimming with the dolphins, waving down at me like, "I'll see you later, Mom." So it's that's helped ground me a lot.
You can tell that it's something, earlier when you said, you're supposed to talk about mental health, but it's really spiritual health. It is what matters to the person. And that's why
100%.
I think when students come to me and they say, how do you separate your faith from your work? I don't.
Right.
I don't. And I especially don't when talking to someone who is a fellow believer, because in that case, there is really no reason to. But even for people, it's not that you shove your faith down their throat or anything like that. It is that in your mind, you will just hope until. That's the beauty of faith, right?
Yeah.
Our faith. And that you can see the beauty in everything.
Right.
And that is what you do. You see the beauty in everything, that the life that he did live here on earth, it was a testimony past the first 24 hours, right?
Right. Exactly.
So, and so then you learn the power of prayer. And then you have whole churches praying for you,
Right.
people who may not have prayed that hard in a long time.
Right. Yes.
So the life that is lived can be used for his glory,
Right.
regardless. And so when you say, swim with the sea creatures, why not? We got aquariums where people are paying hundreds of dollars for their children to swim with the dolphin. And we know we serve a God who walked on water,
Right.
And
Exactly.
so it's just those things that seem coincidence can be so, it's coincidence to others.
Right.
Said God winks to us.
Right.
And they're needed sometimes for healing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the role your husband played in all of this? I know, I mean, it sounds like y'all are the best of friends.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what role did he play? And what role do you think, if a woman is going through this, what is his role during the pregnancy? So, at 20 weeks, when you all got the diagnosis, and then during the delivery, following delivery, when you get home, how can a partner, so husband or not, how can a partner make this easier? Because it was clear how your friends and family showed up. It's amazing. Some people have no one to invite them anywhere. And so you're grieving at home alone. But you had people who believed like you.
Right.
And so you had the support. But what is husband's role? What was your husband's role?
He was really the mouthpiece, I think about it. I was glad you mentioned at 20 weeks because when we left the doctor's office after the anatomy ultrasound, when we just found out, I had called my parents and I was trying to describe to them what was going on, and I broke down crying. So he grabbed the phone, he described what was happening, and that was sort of who he was throughout. He was vocalizing what was happening with the Facebook Live videos. And then we had researched other pulmonary hypertension specialists. And so there was I think it's the Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania or Philadelphia, CHOP. They have a specialty center there. And so he was contacting them. And, we were going back and forth. And I'm just like, I don't think Judah could handle this flight. And in my husband's mind, nothing is impossible with God. So he was contacting them. He was ready to find a plane to put Judah on to send him to these specialists, So that's just who he is, very strong externally, but, behind closed doors, he was crying just as much as I was. We would sort of take turns and supporting one another. And that was really good for me to see because I'm not I don't really have really low lows or really high highs. So, whereas he does, he experiences all the things. So, when he's crying, I was like, oh, I didn't know you felt this deeply. Of course, I love my child. I've been with him for 9 months. I feel like we were having our own little internal conversations. Like he would tell me when he's hungry. I would tell him when he's kicking too much. Me and Judah had grown together for 9 months. I didn't realize my husband was going to be so deeply connected to Judah as well. So that was actually really unifying for us to see, oh my gosh, he is devastated just as much as I am. So that was actually helpful because I didn't feel alone in my sadness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, strength, they help us with strength, communication, not regrounding and encouragement. And then really just, it seems like y'all's connection is even stronger now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
it's really sweet. So we flash forward now, you are a missed mom.
Uh-huh.
So why did you choose to become a part of Operation Miss? What made you say at this phase that this is something you wanted?
Yeah, well, with just having so many unexpected things happen with pregnancy, like my first miscarriage was a blighted ovum. They couldn't explain that. They can't explain why Judah had an omphalocele, you know? So I was just like, okay, pregnancy is really this great unknown.
Mhm.
You know, let's have some professionals, you all, who can at least monitor me while I'm going through this, just to have somebody say, like, "Hey, it looks like your body battery is like a -50 all the time. Why is that?" So let's see what we could do to help that. Like I mentioned with the doula and her even suggesting the beet juice. Like I feel like it's in that vein of you having a different perspective
Yeah.
to say like, "Hey, let's try this and see if it helps prevent this from happening."
Mhm.
Like I'm just so open now to other solutions. And so I felt like you were offering up an alternative that was proven to help, hopefully prevent like miscarriages and birth defects.
Yeah.
I think that the bigger the team,
Mhm.
better the experience,
Right.
especially if you have people on your team that you want there.
Mhm.
Right.
When you brought up the anesthesiologist, I don't think what I think about healthcare providers is that they have to know their audience. Because
Yes.
there will be people who, if if he saw you, he's like, oh, maybe I should take this off, make her feel a little bit more comfortable, right? Not even
Right.
if you had to look at the hat, but that just thinking about society, where we are right now, is that what you should wear while you're putting somebody under anesthesia, right?
Mhm.
So for us, what we see is that women are having to choose the team that is available, not choose
Mhm.
the team that they would want. And you would never, as young as when we were 6 or 7, they're like, choose who you want on your team. You got to choose who you wanted on your basketball team. Sometimes the same person was not chosen.
Exactly. Some people don't make the cut.
Some people don't, right, Jessica?
Yeah.
But in the society where we live, we have women who literally, there's one OB in the area, that's who they get, right? And
Gosh.
so outside of that, they should still have choice.
Right.
So we
Exactly.
really, when I say we are honored to walk the journey, not just with you, with every mom that says we want to be a part of Operation Miss, it is an honor because for us, we just want to be whatever it is that you need.
Yeah.
And what we know you need is to know your body better, to
Mhm.
know when something changes. That's really all that we do. You know
Yeah.
your body better so that you know
Mhm.
when something is not right. We cannot
Yeah.
tell you what is not right, but you can tell that something is not right. And if you
Right.
monitor it long enough before you get pregnant, then
Mm.
you can say, okay, well, at least I know if I have 4 or 5 clients back to back and I have to go pick up Brooklyn, that's not a
Right.
good day for me. I'm going to have high stress. Or
Right.
if my
Yeah.
husband is working a job and he's not able to help,
Right.
then I'm going to have to back off of my responsibilities for the day. You already know that before you get
Right.
pregnancy. You already know the
Mhm.
stress or strain, not stress, because children obviously are not a stressor for you, but you know the toll that it takes on your body to take care of
Right.
a toddler now.
Mhm.
And so
Yes.
those are things that you know so that you can do better. There are days when you may hydrate better, walk more,
Mhm.
rest, and then you see how your body responds. So being prepared, that's what we want for women. Know your body
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then know what's different about it so that you can communicate that to the other team of people that you have taking care of you and your baby at that point. So
Yeah.
you joining now makes all the sense to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
so that when you do get Solomon, right?
Yes,
Great
yes,
compliment.
yeah,
Then you can be making better health lifestyle choices along the way.
right, right, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
Catherine, I love that analogy about like picking your basketball team or whatever in school. Because didn't you feel like so powerful, like when it was your turn to like pick your team? Like
Right.
you never felt that power when like you were on the sidelines. But
Exactly.
you have to pick your team. It was like, you felt so good. And that's how moms should feel when
That's
they're like
true.
picking their birth team because you
Mhm,
are really in charge. This wouldn't be a team like without you. Like we are all together because of you and the experience that you're having. So you should be able to be the captain of your ship.
mhm,
And because you had a chiropractor, you had a doula, like so like you already are knowing, now you have Miss, so you just have this
mhm.
beautiful team of, providers that are team Ashlee.
Yes,
Um,
yeah,
and that's super important because sometimes you have a whole lot of people in the room, but they're not on the same team. Like sometimes you can have people in the room
mm,
that are just there to do a job. Like the
Mhm.
anesthesiologist, he was an anesthesiologist and doing his job. Like I don't think he was thinking about being team you or like this is the actual person that's having an experience. He's just thinking, I'm gonna do my job, I'm gonna get paid, I'm gonna move on to the next job.
right, exactly.
But that's not a good experience. So just like you were talking about that gynecologist with the wait list, with this like spa-like feel to healthcare, I
Uh-huh,
truly believe, and in a lot of countries, it is like that. In like birthing centers and hospitals, like
mhm,
because moms should have that spa-like experience when
right.
it's time to birth their babies.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I feel like we're on the brink of a shift in our country. I really do. I really hope so.
Mhm,
Because I don't think that would be hard to shift. But
yeah,
if people can stop just thinking about doing a job and especially thinking about
yeah,
labor and birth as a job and start thinking about it as a huge experience,
uh-huh,
I think things would be so much better.
mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a privilege to help usher in life to the world and to
It
sustain.
is an honor. Like you said, it's truly an honor.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Do you have any other questions, Jessica? I am like, this has just been so amazing.
This is good.
So anything you would tell mom, so from your perspective, you had your husband as as your communicator, right?
Mhm, right.
How would you, so any general advice, obviously, that you want to give to a mom anywhere along the journey, but how would you tell a mom to communicate what she needs? You have a lot of experience as a counselor. You have a lot
Mhm,
of experience as a mother.
yes.
How would you empower women to communicate their needs to anyone who decides to be a part of their birth experience? What tips would you give them?
So, I would say know know your stuff. Like, I had read a few books or even I mean, let's be honest, who's finishing books? I had read a few chapters, a few introductions.
Let's be real.
I knew, like, okay, so I knew about a chiropractor, like, oh, okay, if you're having lower back pain during pregnancy, chiropractors can help with that. And so just know your things that are accessible to you,
Yeah.
you know? And so that it doesn't feel like have that on deck already so
Yes.
that you're not sorta scrambling, to get things together. One thing that I didn't realize I needed to do, was know my family and my partner's family medical history better than I did. Like, I knew my husband had scoliosis, but he had been supernaturally healed from it, so it didn't occur to me that it would have gotten passed down in the genes because he didn't have it anymore? I knew cysts run in our family. I've had cysts, my mom has cysts, her whole father's side of the family, everybody has huge cyst, but I don't think about that as like, oh, this is something that my baby could have. Because
Mhm,
Judah had a very large cyst when he was born as well.
mhm,
Um, and so just things like that. Like, I feel like when you go to the doctors, they ask who has cancer, who has high blood pressure and diabetes. You're not thinking of like the other stuff. Like, Judah also had a cleft palate. And that became an issue because the omphalocele plus the cleft palate, that happens a lot with trisomy 13, which is an incompatible with life genetic disorder.
mhm,
So we had geneticists that first week saying he might have something that's incompatible with life. Had we known my sister-in-law had a cleft palate as a baby,
mhm,
we could have said, no, he's just had a bad luck of the draw with he's gotten all of our family stuff,
mhm,
you know, but we didn't know, so we were standing in the NICU calling family members like, "Hey, did you have this disease? Did you have this? Did you have this?" Because we didn't know if it was part of this larger thing or if it was a bunch of individual things that
mhm,
happened. So, yeah, I wish somebody had told me that, like, go through your siblings, your parents, your partner, and his siblings. Know
mhm.
what everybody had under 2, because it could show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Just be ready.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, for sharing your story with our audience. I don't know how you make it look so easy to talk about all of this stuff, but in hearing your story, I can see how you realize the power of telling your story because
Right.
it is
Absolutely.
extremely powerful for people to hear. And as believers, Jessica and I we marvel every time we get to see miracles. And
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
you got to see a miracle in the hospital.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'm grateful that you chose to share it with us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if people want to find you, they want to take part in your counseling services, please tell them
Sure.
how they can do that.
Yeah, so we have a website, called packlightcounselingllc.com. Can go on there. We do have a Facebook page and Instagram under Packlight Counseling, but you can also just email us at packlightcounselingllc@gmail.com, and we can get you connected.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. This was a pleasure. Such an honor. Thank you.